Welcome to the Free and Open Mind podcast with Hardy Brooklyn and
Michelle Wild.
We've switched it up a little bit since we've been still under quarantine, so we figured we'd have a different arrangement to make it a little bit more comfortable for our old bones. We'd like to hope everybody's staying safe and continue to talk about what to do when somebody violates one of my boundaries or
your consent.
Or my consent. Or if I give somebody consent and they go too far and they don't acknowledge it. What do I do? How do I talk off? And it brings me to just a couple of, really relevant on my mind is that I got a phone call a couple of days ago from a client. And they had taken me off the project. They told me they couldn't pay me for the project. There was no budget money for me. And somebody like me, I make my living as a consultant by my time. My time is valuable. People pay me for my time. And this individual is calling to vent about a project that they had taken off of me that has gone way over budget. And they don't listen to me either. So we've had many meetings on this project. We've discussed a vision. We've discussed a plan of action that's actually best practices. I did a bunch of research. I actually just found out that they ended up not doing any of the research that they presented to me. It was all emotion.
Did you have a contract together, or an agreement, a verbal agreement of you would give X amount of time and X amount of advice, or?
There was an agreement. The agreement was when you use my time, you pay me. And when you tell me that you're not paying me for a project, I have the expectation that you don't need me in that project anymore and you're not going to pay me. So if you're not going to pay me for a project and you agree when you communicate with me that anything involving your business, you're going to pay me, and then you start communicating with me about things, and then what I said was, sir, you took me off the project, you're not paying me for the project. Why do I need to hear this information? This is not relevant to me. There's no need for you to give me your company's inside secrets. So what I did there...
Why do you think he was doing that?
Because he wanted a vent. He wanted me to reinforce his belief. He wanted me to reinforce his own personal insecurities. That's what he wanted to. He had something, or he wanted me to give him free consulting to get him forward because people do that. That's human nature.
Right.
You ask a question and you have to be able to say no. And he was really mad at me when he got off the phone. I mean, he was honestly mad at me. I don't know what happened after that.
Because you said you sensed your boundary and you told him that he violated your consent.
He violated my boundary, correct. He said that the agreement that I have is you pay me for my time. If you're not going to pay me for my time, we don't have the conversation. And I didn't lose the customer. I spoke to the customer this morning and everything is fine with everybody.
Okay. So what, if he had approached you another way and said, listen, I'm not going to be able to pay you, but can you still help me out with something?
It depends on how much time it would have taken.
Okay.
But again, he then was asking me permission to violate my boundary.
Right.
Where the way that he did it was, we finished, hey, how's the phones working? And then the conversation literally went into next step.
Okay.
And he didn't create a boundary. And I started to say, wait a second, I'm not on that project.
Well, I guess he made an assumption that he paid you already, right? And so that he can still continue using your services because he paid you.
Right, but he's not paying me for those minutes moving forward.
Right. Well, so he didn't understand what the boundary was of him paying you and the service you were going to give him.
He understood that when I spoke to them this morning, he understood that boundary totally clear.
Okay.
He understood that.
Now he does.
Now he
before
does.
He didn't.
When he realized that when we transitioned topics, in my mind, because his boss told me that she will not pay for anything website related to me, the clock stopped when I finished having the other business development conversation.
Right.
Now we're talking about a different topic. It's a website. If that continued in my notes and my follow-up, the whole invoice would have gotten rejected.
Right.
So I set a boundary. He kind of still doesn't understand that boundary. So even after that conversation that we had, he understood, he acknowledged it, but then we again attempted to violate it.
I mean, I think everybody does that because I think a lot of times what people end up doing is they say, okay, yeah, I'll help you with A, but then when you get there, all of a sudden there's B and C. So they just assume, oh, well, you're here anyway, so you might as well do it. No, it doesn't work that way. I didn't sign up for B and C. I only signed up for A. If you ask me, and we can renegotiate like what you want and what you really need, and you're upfront and honest about it, and I do have it in me to do it, then maybe we can renegotiate that boundary and consent.
And that's really important. We have to, when we're talking to people, when we're asking people for favors, let's not assume that they're going to give it. Let's not assume they have all the time in the world to give you. Let's not assume it. Let's say, hey, Mike, we're really good if you can help me do this.
Right.
Or if I can ask you this. Or if we can do this. Because I would have reacted very differently depending on how he approached me. If he approached me saying, man, I can't believe they took you off the project. It's driving me crazy. Maybe you can kind of hide it in an extra 15 minutes here, an extra, kind of communicated with me how I can be compensated for my time ethically.
Right.
Or emotionally. There was no emotional acknowledgement that he was taking something of value from me.
Right. Well, he obviously didn't realize it. That's part of the big problem right there, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And when we move forward in life, it doesn't only happen in work. It happens everywhere. So me standing that boundary, the worst thing that can possibly happen is I lose the client. That's the worst thing. They can't sue me.
Right, but the thing is, if you do lose a client, then and they're not going to respect you, then it's not really worth having the client.
Right.
Right.
Correct.
I mean, but people get scared, like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. It might feel like that in that moment, because I've been in those situations too. Oh my God, I'm never going to get another job. He's going to tell everybody else. No, if you stand up for yourself, it doesn't work that way. You're going to find people that are going to respect your boundaries. And once you get rid of the negative stuff.
All that negative stuff, all those negative voices in your head, they're coming from constructs in society, preconceived notions which are in the past. They don't even exist anymore. Right. So a lot of the baggage that we're carrying with us is completely irrelevant today. Because think about it, what kind of world do we live in? Like when I was 15 years old, I had a whole bunch of boundaries. I had a whole bunch of constructs. I had a whole bunch of expectations on male-female interaction and how that was going to play out. And now it's 2020, and the male-female interaction and all of those constructs, they don't exist anywhere in any possible, oh my God, version of what they were back then.
Right.
I mean, back then it was totally okay to grab a woman's ass, grab a woman's tit. That was okay. Slap a woman's ass. That was okay. Have a woman slap your ass. That was okay. Talk down to people. I mean, all of that was okay.
Well, I think also people I've done it too, like, they're so scared to change that they just have these certain, boundaries, certain consent, certain expectations, and they're not willing to, bend and, flow and, kind of, let it happen.
And when you start...
Everybody does, because they're scared. Because then all of a sudden they feel like they're losing control.
Yes, and that's what all of this leans down to. The person that's violating your boundaries needs to feel like they are in control of the situation.
Yeah.
And if they're not in control in a lot of situations, it's going to get violated, especially in a less of a business sense, but more in a emotional partner sense.
Yeah. So I have my story about consent and boundary violation, but we were talking about what to do when it happens. So I was in a relationship with someone for about 4 years, and he was extremely abusive mentally, and he broke my consent and my boundaries numerous times, and I was so psychologically sort of brainwashed that I didn't really speak up for myself. And once I actually had the courage to kick him out of the apartment, the next step was, once I regrouped and kind of, found myself again and stabled myself, was what was I going to do? Because I'm part of a community, the fetish community, where consent violation is huge. It is a huge thing, and it crosses a line because, people say, well, I consented to being on, the St. Andrew's Cross, but I didn't consent to X, Y, and Z. Consent's a very blurry line in the fetish community, and it can be a very blurry line.
And also in the general sexual, interhuman, personal relationship.
Yes, because, I could say, I want to be spanked, and I'm okay with that, and then he'll say, okay, that's great, but his version of spanking might be way different than my version of spanking. So those details have to really be defined. You have to understand and really think it through. I'm okay with being spanked over your knee, but I'm not okay with being spanked in public with other people naked.
Or I'm okay with penetration if you use protection, or I'm okay with penetration with no protection, or I'm okay with penetration with internal relief.
Yeah. So I mean, that's sort of a lesson you're kind of, hopefully what we teach you, you'll take with you. But it's going to happen to you where you give consent to something and you really didn't define it, and the person that you're giving the consent to has a whole different version of what that means to them. So you really need to ask them, when I say I give you consent, what does that mean to you? That's a really good question to ask. So one of the things I was concerned about is how do I take care of, not take care of, but how do I speak up in a community without being looked upon as a bitch, or like making waves and like, you deserved it and you stayed with him and like, that's what you get. How do you stand up for yourself and how do you say something? In our community, there is a couple of organizations where you can file grievances anonymously, and that other promoters and other leaders in the community can actually contact this organization and find out. They don't find out details, they don't find out names, they just know so many people filed a grievance. And he's allowed to have his rebuttal against it as well, and people can know that as well. The other thing is, we have a website where it's millions of people on the website, and most of the time what people do is they voice their opinion on the website, and they usually do it after it happens, so it's very emotionally charged, and it's not factual, and it's just very like one-sided, and he did X, Y, and Z to me, and he did all this to me. So you have to really sit and think about that it wasn't necessarily you that he was doing it to, it's the way he is as a person.
And that relates to not just the fetish world. What Michelle was talking about is, this is the way that people act in all genres.
Yeah.
I mean, I see the same type of issues and instances where people are interacting, and it's whether it's fetish, whether it's music scene, whether it's disco, whether it's the club scene, whatever scene it is, when males, females, males, whatever your preferences interact, there are people that have different expectations of how the evening is going to play out or how their lives are going to play out. And a lot of times, because people don't communicate that, and drugs and alcohol are involved, and societal pressures are involved, that people put themselves in this situation. So it's not just the fetish world. I just want to make sure everybody's completely clear about that.
I'm just giving my
She's just giving her personal story.
So to understand that this person is very narcissistic, is, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I would say a sociopath for sure. So one of the things, the organizations that I filed something with, she's a lawyer, and I asked her, well, what do I do? Because I don't want to post anything on FetLife, because the last thing I want somebody to say to me is, why did you stay? I don't believe you, because he's not like that towards me. I don't see that. He's such a good person and all that other. And people are allowed to have that opinion of him because that's what he might only be showing them, right? So you have to understand that. So one of the things she said was, you tell all the leaders in the community, you take them aside and you explain to them. You could share the story if you want. I had a story written out of what happened. And you just tell them, like a rational human being, this person violated my consent. This person was X, Y, and Z to me, right? And then because, I wasn't the only person that spoke up, they said, okay, thank you for telling me. It doesn't get spread out. It's not a big fight. It's not a bully war online. I did it as an adult, and then I just went on my way. He could still function in the community. He could do whatever he wants. I just want people to be aware. This is what we call information consent. So I'm giving you information, and I'm telling you, this person is dangerous. What you do with that information is completely on you. If you want to take that chance and see, well, he seems nice, and you want to go down that road, that's completely up to you. But I gave that information to you that this person is a danger to the community.
And we need to circle back, because I hear stories all the time about boyfriends that bring their girlfriends to the football team and they let them get used because they want to be liked or acknowledged. And all of those consents are the same type of violation. You really need to speak up. And you need to feel that you are protected when you speak up. And if you don't know where to speak up, send us a message and we will help you find a place to speak up. Because whether it's high school, whether it's junior high school, whether it's church, whether it's choir, it doesn't matter where it is. When your boundaries and your consent are violated, And especially when you're underage and you can't even give it, you need to learn how to speak up for yourself, because that pattern is going to lead so much negative energy in the future if you don't learn to speak up, that you're not going to be able to live your true self and break free of the negative baggage of the past.
And I'm going to tell you, as scary as it is to speak up, once you do, you're going to feel really extremely empowered. Very empowered. The other thing is, I wanted to say that most organizations have HR where you can talk to somebody anonymously. They don't have to know what you said or anything like that.
Correct. And there are ways of also communicating it. So we have to think back to that, and we think back to, like, my consent's been violated, and what do I do? My boundary's been violated, what do I do? And what's the cost of living with a person that violates your boundary?
Can I just say, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. One more important thing. You're going to save somebody else from having their consent violated.
Correct. That's very important.
Right. Extremely important, because you didn't like it having done to you. You don't want them to keep on doing that.
So when we look at this, and we look at the negative emotion that comes up with around the boundaries, how do we stand up to it? What is the cost? What is the ultimate cost of letting somebody constantly violate your boundaries? And in the sex world, in the fetish world, there's a lot of things that can happen. It could be your life. It could be you can get pregnant. It could be, you get kicked. It could be whatever it might be. It could be the music world. Somebody steals the greatest music and makes a lot of money. It doesn't matter. It could be in the business world where your hours are given away. And for me, what really made me realize and see boundaries are being violated was when I learned and understood the difference when people were starting and stopping paying me. That was the clearest and easiest fine definition of boundaries, because interpersonal touching boundaries for me, they didn't exist because they were not done well when I was growing up, and they still aren't done well in most families in America. And when I look at it, and I have clients that do this all the time, they call me and they're like, hey, can you help me with X, Y, and Z? And I help them with X, Y, and Z. And then the clock stops, or we get in the elevator and we're on our way out.
And then they ask you a question.
One
more thing.
And it's not even one more thing. It's like, oh, what do you think about this? Or they'll continue that conversation where, oh, wait, it's only the elevator walking out. No, it's not, because then I engage.
It's still my time.
It's correct. It's still my time. And then when I re-engage them, and if I do engage them and answer their question, they will then promptly walk me to the subway or the city bike.
I usually tell people when people want to discuss business when I'm out and stuff, because I've had people ask me business questions, and I just say I don't discuss business when I'm out. Like, if you want to discuss, send me an email, and we can talk then. Now is not the right time. I just want to say one more thing, because this is a really important component of speaking up, is you are going to get backlash.
Yes.
I got some serious backlash. My ex tried to take me to court. I had a lot of stuff go on in the 2 years that we've been broken up. And there were times I was crying, I was upset, I wanted to just take a baseball bat and beat the shit out of him. I thought of all these devious thoughts in my head of what I could do to get back to him. But I sat here on the couch and I just thought, what would happen if I actually did that? What are going to be the repercussions? I'm going to start a whole ball of an argument, of a fight, and who knows what's going to happen. And you know what? He's never going to go away. And the other thing is, he's going to see that he got me again. He got a reaction out of me again. That he still can affect me, because that's what those people kind of want to do. Those sociopaths, those narcissistic people. So I realized at a certain point, I just have to sit tight. I just have to be patient, because we all reap what we sow. Whatever fruit your tree bears, you will eventually be eating that.
And we really want to think back to what is causing this. It's about believing in our own self and believing that what we feel and what we want is right. Hey, I feel like I want to do this. I feel like I don't want to be slapped in the face. And for Michelle, the cost of the backlash was a lot less than the cost of her life.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are so worried about backlash. I mean, I had a great, amazing career working in the power generation industry, designing networks. And they were violating my boundaries left and right. They were calling me at all hours. They were doing things that were irresponsible. Then they weren't respecting me. And as I started to put those boundaries in, and they considered to act like they're childish the way that they were acting, I lost that client. So I lost a six-figure income, which was the cost for me to put that boundary up. But when I look at myself now, and I look at my true being, I feel so much better. The stress that's on me is so much less. I can see other things in my life for what they really are. I can see how I got to where I am now because I'm not focused on, oh my God. And I don't have conversations with my family anymore about how much this person did me or this person didn't listen to me or how miserable my day at work was. My stories are like, oh, this is so great. I talked to this person and I helped them and they taught me this and I learned that. And my life went from being negative communication to positive communication.
I think, though, for some people that are listening, they're like, but I can't afford to lose my job. I can't afford to lose that one big client that's paying me the six figures. So in the coming episodes that we have, we're going to be discussing how you are able to talk to somebody and set those boundaries without losing that, like cutting off the whole relationship.
Or trying not to.
Right, trying not to. How you make it, how it's not an angry thing and you're not blaming them for anything, and how you're effectively communicating what you both need and what's both going to work for both of you.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think what we're going to start moving forward to now is how do we get rid of all of that negative process, that negative thought, all of those things and that have conditioned you through time to act in a certain way that's preventing you from being who you really want to be and actually going ahead and enforcing these boundaries and setting the boundaries and saying no to people and actually setting up consent and living your true life and having the fun that Hardy has and the fun that Miss Michelle has.
Yes, whatever's holding you back. We forgot to thank our sponsor, headshop.com, HEADSHOP.com for all your headshot needs. Headshot needs. This is Free and Open Mind. Who are you?
And what will you be doing?
I'm Michelle Wild.
And I'm Hardy Brooklyn. Till next time.
Thank you.